Great. Let's get into this. Today we're doing a deep dive on an essay that it really tackles one of those roles we all play, but maybe don't fully understand.
Such a common idea, isn't it?
It is. We're looking at The Rock That Stayed. It's a really profound piece by Pedro Mala, who founded the Ghosts movement.
And this essay is so important because it completely redefines what it means to be someone's rock.
How so?
Well, Maho just moves it away from being, a neat phrase or this tidy, admirable identity.
Right, not something you put on a resume.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He frames it instead as this quiet, persistent practice,
Yeah.
a practice of presence. It's about how you become sort of fundamentally linked to another person's survival.
And when he says survival, he's not always talking about some huge life or death crisis.
No, not at all. He means the day-to-day version.
Like the survival of just getting out of bed or answering that email you've been avoiding, just navigating the mundane difficulty of life.
Precisely. And that's where the core paradox of the essay comes in. We tend to think of a rock as, this symbol of strength, of rigidity, almost invulnerable. Polished, yeah. But Maha makes it clear that real steadiness is not the polished kind. It's not the kind that speaks loudly about how much it's doing.
So where is it found then?
It's found in really ordinary places. He says it's through the slow accumulation of being there when it would have been easier not to be.
It's not the marble statue of reliability then. It's more like a deeply rooted tree that really changes the entire definition, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests the role is purely functional and often completely silent. And that fits perfectly with his work in the Ghost movement, which is all about these unacknowledged efforts that sustain human connection.
So the big takeaway right at the start is that this is about function. It's about providing stable ground.
Yes, and that ground is built from such simple things. The text you send every morning, the call you always answer,
Yes.
even the quiet second you let hang in the air after they've said something really painful.
I have to ask, if it's not an identity you just choose, how does a person even get into this role? The essay talks about it being an almost accidental formation.
It's fascinating. Mala points to two main starting points, and neither one is about a conscious plan. They're born out of necessity.
The first one he mentions is the childhood origin, and this one sounds powerful, almost painful.
It is. This is for someone who grew up in a home where, as he puts it, calm was not guaranteed.
You learned early on that stability isn't something you just get. It's something people have to actively make.
And that teaches you a very specific set of skills, right? You become an expert at reading the small shifts, a change in tone, the sound of footsteps.
The way a door closes.
Exactly. You learn to read the weather in the room because your own emotional survival depends on it. And then at some point, you go from just reading the weather to being the calm in the storm.
I have to pause on that, though, because that can also sound a lot like codependence. Trying to manage everyone else's feelings so you can feel stable. How does Malha draw the line?
That is a crucial question. And the essay addresses it by focusing on the direction of the energy.
Okay.
In codependency, you're trying to fix the other person's chaos to soothe your own anxiety. Mala's rock is different. Their consistency is offered outward, without demanding a specific outcome. You stabilize the room so the other person can find their footing, not so you can feel safe.
That's a huge distinction. Stabilizing the room versus fixing the problem.
It is.
Huh.
And then there's the second origin story, the adult life origin. This happens later. Maybe a partner unravels, a friend goes through something terrible, a parent gets older.
The ground shifts under everyone's feet.
Right. And you suddenly realize, as he says, your own nervous system becomes the weather in the room. You respond once, then you do it again, and before you know it, you become that consistent point without ever trying to.
And the essay says it doesn't feel like you're becoming anything. It just feels like you're doing what is needed.
One more check-in, one more moment of not turning away.
It's so ordinary, you don't even name it. Not until you look back over years and see that all those ordinary moments built a surface, something solid for someone else to lean on.
And if we look at the physical analogy he uses, it gets even clearer. What does the rock actually provide? He says it's not softness, which is comforting but might not last.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hardness, which can be harsh.
It's just contact.
Contact.
So it's about providing a boundary. The difference between, as he puts it, falling into open air and finding something that does not move.
Exactly. People don't always need advice when they're spiraling. They just need an unshifting presence, something that lets their own body and mind settle down enough to keep going.
Which brings us to the actual practice of staying. You mentioned it's rarely planned.
Right. Planning implies a choice, but for a lot of people in this role, it just starts as proximity. You were there, you answered the call, you stayed through the messy part.
And what defines that staying? It seems to be more about restraint than some kind of heroic action.
Mala highlights three key restraints. First is not disappearing when the atmosphere changed, when things got dark or uncomfortable.
Okay.
Second, not punishing the truth when it arrived. So not making someone pay for being vulnerable or difficult.
And the third one feels like the hardest. Not making it worse by needing to be right. That requires so much self-control.
It does. It's what he calls staying without theater. And that integrity is what builds safety on a really deep physiological level. The essay connects this directly to the nervous system.
So trust forms in the body before it forms in language.
Yes. Think about it. When someone is in chaos, their whole system is signaling danger. But when they're around this stable presence, their body unconsciously registers a boundary. He says they notice they can breathe again when you are present.
It's an immediate drop in stress.
And that repeated, nonverbal signal of safety is what builds real trust. Much more than just saying, I'm here for you.
That makes so much sense. So when someone asks, are you free? What they might really be saying is, can you hold this with me?
Precisely. Can you be the boundary I need right now? And eventually you become one of the steady points in their landscape. And landscapes, as Mala says, shape people. They shape how you recover and how you walk through life.
So let's break down what this looks like in practice, because it's not all, deep emotional processing. A lot of it is just really mundane.
Absolutely. The essay splits it into two functions. First, there's the practical rock.
The logistical support.
Yes. Showing up with food, doing the school run when someone just can't face the day.
Right.
Remembering appointments. Sitting in a waiting room and just being there. Silently.
It's the friend who brings soup and has already handled that one annoying task you forgot, and they don't even need a big thank you. It's just removing friction.
Exactly. And then there's the emotional rock. And this is where that internal composure is so critical.
What does that look like?
It's hearing someone's fear without jumping in to fix it, hearing their anger without matching it, hearing despair without flinching or trying to rush them to feel better.
It's staying with them in the messy truth of it, even when it's uncomfortable for you.
Which brings us back to that misunderstanding about strength. People assume the rock has to be stronger.
But Mala says strength implies an advantage, something you have that they don't.
Right. And for him, this role has less to do with advantage and more to do with staying.
I wonder about that, though. What if you're only staying because leaving feels harder, or you're afraid of the conflict? Is the outcome what matters more than the intention?
Mala focuses on the integrity of the act. He acknowledges that sometimes staying is what you were trained to do as a kid, or it's the only move you know. But it gains integrity when you choose it because you realize that leaving would cost more than remaining.
And that cost isn't just external, it's a cost to your own self.
Yes. So the integrity is in the staying without theater. It's a quiet, intentional choice.
But there's a price for that consistency, isn't there? The role can become invisible.
Completely. Because rocks are expected to be there. Reliance just grows. People lean where they've leaned before.
And that's the thin line between being trusted and being taken for granted.
Which leads to what he calls a particular kind of tiredness. It's not the exhaustion from running a marathon. It's the chronic fatigue of constantly keeping your voice level while your own mind is racing.
A constant low-level tax on your system.
It is. And we have to be clear about the difference between control and holding. The essay is very specific here.
Control tries to shape the outcome, to fix it.
Exactly, to soothe its own discomfort. Holding just allows the moment to be what it is.
The river analogy he uses is so good for this. The rock doesn't steer the river, it just gives it a boundary it can touch.
And that boundary allows the person to find their own footing again inside the chaos.
When you look at it that way, you see what he means by the ancient thread. This isn't a modern self-help idea.
No, this pattern of care is older than psychology. It's about continuity. It repeats through generations because we're built to lean on each other. We need those external boundaries.
It's love in one of its most practical forms. It's about recognizing that what you've been doing matters, even if it's been quiet.
But that quiet work creates a huge vulnerability for the rock themselves.
Because you only see how much they were holding up when they're not there.
Exactly. When the rock gets sick, or it just needs a break, that's when everyone, including the rock, realizes how much that quiet consistency was supporting. It can be really confronting.
And what happens when the rock needs to lean on someone? The essay says they often minimize their own needs.
They do. They're so used to holding, they don't know how to receive care. They feel this fear that, as he puts it, Their wobble will destabilize the room,
So they end up lonely in their own storms.
forgetting that the steadiness they offer comes from a human, vulnerable place to begin with.
So what's the final synthesis here? What does this all mean?
It means the truest version of this role doesn't require you to be made of stone. You don't have to be invulnerable. You just have to remember you are a human being while you are staying.
A steady human, not an inanimate object.
And that steady human needs to be held by something too. Mala suggests it's the simple things. Routine. The kettle boiling. A familiar chair.
Or your own breath. A quiet inner point that can just witness the chaos without getting swept away by it.
The steadiness that's offered, he says, is not small.
What?
It changes rooms, it changes days, it changes what a person believes is possible when they are close to breaking.
And I think the ultimate takeaway from the essay is just so beautifully stark. People don't always remember the advice you gave them.
They do remember the person who did not leave.
That's it right there. It's not about strength as an identity. It's about staying as a quiet, consistent, ordinary practice.
He concludes with that powerful line, "You became the ground."
So here's a final thought for you to take away. What does it mean to recognize that your most profound act of love might be your quietest one? And what ordinary, consistent presence in your own life right now are you failing to fully name?